Welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast, bringing you authentic and vulnerable stories that will inspire you to breathe fire on this world and become your own hero. Here's your host, Blaise Hunter.
Hello, welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast. I'm Blaise Hunter, and I am a fertility expert. No, I don't help people get pregnant. This is a different type of expertise. I actually inspire people to birth confidence and self-worth, to birth their books, business ideas, dreams, passions, and goals, as well as help them discover peace amongst infertility. After going through my own sets of traumas and tragedies, dealing with a rare disease, and experiencing 3 miscarriages, I decided to take charge of my life and not let life happen to me, but rather become the hero of my own life. I am not barren. I continually birth my purpose every day. So that's why I've created this show, to demonstrate how even though we all experience setbacks and disappointments, we still have a destiny to birth. We just need to blaze the trail and be expecting. This podcast will inspire you to lean into your hardships and allow them to be the vehicle that transports you into becoming the hero of your life so you can breathe fire on this world. This week's episode is called Identity Check. I am a published author, international speaker, fertility expert, founder of the Heroine Movement, 2020 Influencer Award winner at the Women of Inspiration Awards for all of Canada, and I'm also the CEO of Blaise the Trail Inc. Consulting Agency. My practice is based off of the quote from Fred Devito. What doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. I want to challenge myself and the world to take off the masks and get vulnerable so we can address root issues and grow. That's how we can transform into the best versions of ourselves. So why is understanding who we are and owning it so important to me? Well, for most of my life, I felt unworthy and I hated myself. I cut myself emotionally. I didn't want anyone to know how I truly felt though, so I projected confidence so they wouldn't see the sad and self-loathing girl staring back at them. But just in the last 5 years, I have learned how to remove those masks and layers and just love me as I am. And all I needed was just a little respect for myself. I came across a blog post one time called Mind Valley, and it really put a whole different spin on what self-esteem, self-respect, happiness really means in our lives. And I just truly echo that blog post in this podcast today and break it down how I see it for my own movement, my own work, and to share that on this platform. So we can be told that we should love ourselves, and I'm sure we're all trying to do that, but we can't truly love ourselves if we're continually judging or questioning or second-guessing ourselves. This establishes an identity crisis. So the heart of my heroine movement is actually not self-esteem. It is self-respect. I'm here to open the dialogue about women respecting themselves in all walks of life. And we can't expect others to respect us when we are not practicing what we preach, when we're not taking steps and intentions every single day to show that respect for ourselves. Self-care and self-love, self-confidence, self-worth. These are all things we are supposed to go, yes, I want that. That's positive. I want that for me. I want that for my daughter. I want that for my son. I want that in the world. We always say that. But if we don't reconcile those values with the ultimate goal of self-respect, then we're actually active participants in the identity theft. I know that's a bit harsh, but we need to start realizing this is serious. This is serious for men, women, and our children to know who they are and own it. My whole consulting practice, like I said, is based off of the quote from Fred Devito. And I'm here to issue that challenge to us today to do away with the stories that are told to us and that we just, embody through default. Generations and generations of stories, of culture, of how we've just grown up, and that's how it's supposed to be. And we need to do away with those and embrace our own and positive, uplifting stories. Only then can we authentically love ourselves and be the heroines we're called to be. So what does self-respect actually mean? Self-respect forms the foundation of all the decisions we'll ever make. How you treat yourself and how you allow others to treat you. And you can't build these qualities if you do not know yourself. So we need to do an identity check. Almost like that full body scan like you see at the airport. It's not just the metal detectors anymore. You go into this huge x-ray machine where it's like 360 view, internal, external, right? We submit to the scan at the airport willingly because we need to get on to the airplane. But we often shy away from these soul scans because there's no hiding from things. All our little flaws and our weaknesses. But the moment we can actually embrace the internal x-ray, we take a giant step towards knowing who we are, flaws and all, owning our awesome and embracing our flaws, and identify what we need in order to own our true identity day by day. So what's the difference between self-respect and self-esteem? Self-esteem is knowing you can conduct yourself confidently in every situation. Outwardly, you are successful, which contributes to your self-esteem, but it's possible to experience and act with self-esteem while having little self-respect. And I can attest to this. I was that image. I stood out there in my job and anything that I did, and I had great self-esteem. I had an Oscar-worthy performance. No one would have guessed I had little self-respect for myself because outwardly I showed positive self-esteem. The problem with just relying on self-esteem though, or being caught up in this evaluative framework is the moment you have a bad day, doubt yourself, or something comes against you, you fall prone to blame, guilt, regret, and stress. And you begin that emotional cutting. And just like how I used to be, the go-getter, people pleaser, striving for excellence, perfectionist, type A personality, I got so focused on getting that approval and showing that self-esteem because I was always getting praise for my doing rather than just in my being. So we need to strive for self-respect, not just self-esteem, because we can mask that and we can show that we have great self-esteem, but are we really practicing self-respect? On the opposite spectrum, though, the difference between self-respect and ego, those people that just seem to be over the top confident and oozing with self-respect, it's not the case. An inflated ego really stems from feeling unequal to others because deep inside, they feel worthless and undeserving of respect. The way we present our lack of identity does range for everyone though. So it presents in many different ways, but that's one way. And it's all stemming from the same insecurity, the same identity theft. But when you respect yourself, the ego is still there. We never get rid of ego. It's always there. We just learn to coexist with it though. It just doesn't play a huge part in our actions day to day. The person with self-respect simply likes themselves, which is not contingent on their own personal successes or failures or the opinions of others. So how does one boost confidence and self-respect? Well, I think we need to decide what labels actually define us rather than just, defaulting, taking on these labels and stories from society and culture and just how we've grown up. We need to make the decision what actually defines us, who we are. So I suggest doing the identity checklist, which I call the 5 W's. Who, what, why, where, when. Who am I? What makes me unique? Why am I here? Where do I want to go? And the when is always for discerning the timing of things, establishing self-control, discipline. And you know what? I have found this has really helped me do a check-in and decide who I am today and who I want to be and how do I get there. And it's a great way to make that conscious decision every day and know who I am versus, Women, we get so busy doing our lives. We rarely take the time to sense how we are feeling about things. And we're just in autopilot and we just go. And if we don't do our own coding in our own brains, in our own life, we literally just take on the default code. And we rarely ask, is this what I want to do? Is this where I want to go? Or is this just what people tell me I should do and tell me what it should be? And I take that on, right? So I promise, I run through this identity check every single day and it's helped me so much. My fears, my thoughts, and others challenge my identity all the time. And if I don't know who I am or what I'm doing or my why, then I truly can't stand in my power because I do not know who I am contending for. And it's impossible to respect something you do not know. It's like we are constantly facing custom agents every single day. Whether it's our internal thoughts or external things and people and opinions and culture, we're getting scanned. Who are you? Are you what you say? Does your story check out? It's like I traveled all over Europe last year and I was constantly getting questioned at the customs desk. And, they're just doing their job, but it's funny. Like I am who I say I am. I am me. I am Blaise. I have a daughter. And I would go there and the minute they started questioning me, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm guilty. I always feel guilty. I don't know if anyone else feels like that. I'm like, I confess. I'm so innocent. I don't understand why I get so nervous. And then, in Europe, they're very conscientious of child trafficking. So they're very hard on women traveling with little children without spouses. And they're always doing extra checks. So they would be like, is this your daughter? Is this your mom? And they would go to my daughter, is this your mom? And my daughter's scared too. So she's like, and I'm like, say I'm your mom. Say I'm your mom. Oh my God. Right? They're questioning you. And just like at the customs desk going through security at airports and at the borders, we're getting challenged every single moment of the day if we're really who we say we are. So we have to create this internal passport for ourselves, just like we get from the country that we are born in and that we live in. We need an actual internal passport. And one is made internally, whether we actually create one or not. If you don't take the time and the energy to do it yourself, it does go on default mode and becomes a false identity because you haven't consciously coded in your own identity. You're just taking on what society tells you, what your circle tells you, what you ever think you should be. You take that on and just do, but it's not your own personal coding inside. It's not your own passport. It is a false identity. Self-confidence derives from self-respect. Self-respect stems from self-love. And self-love grows from authenticity, your true identity. So it really all boils down to the identity check. If you build your own internal passport and stamp it validated each and every day, that will help you boost the confidence to take you on whatever journey you are on, whatever path, whatever you want to do. You know you are validated and you are who you say you are because you've created the code. You've created the passport and you've stamped it. But the biggest adversary to identity is combating that negative self-talk, that negative inner dialogue we have every single day. So you do the identity check first thing in the morning, the 5 W's, you go through that, you feel very confident, self-assured, respecting yourself, owning your worth, you are on top of the world. And it's built from that genuine, authentic place. You leave that house feeling that you can conquer the world. Then throughout the day, these so-called custom agents start popping up. Whether it's at work, conflict with coworkers or friends or your mate or, your children, and you're constantly being bombarded, even your own internal thoughts like, oh, I can't fit my pants today. I must be needing to lose weight. I need to exercise, but I don't have time to exercise. And who am I? I don't have time for my own life. And where do I want to go? Right? everything is challenging your worth, your identity. And if we don't learn how to deal with those so-called customs agents challenging us, whether it's our own toxic thoughts or other things, we can end off the day feeling completely beaten down, worthless, and lost, and feeling like there has been an identity theft. So this is where the self-regulator comes into play, about really doing that identity check. I always say to people, I have these deep conversations with myself, and people laugh at me. Oh, you talk to yourself, Blaise? Oh, yeah. Funny. And I'm like, yeah. That's called self-regulation. No one can call you on your stuff like you can. We are our own greatest BS detector, but only if we allow ourselves to get that brutally honest with ourselves. And a trick I use to make sure I'm being honest, because it's so easy to lie to ourselves. And I'll give you an example. I had 3 miscarriages, but I wanted that second baby. And I wasn't doing the identity check of, is this where I want to go? Is this the right time? I just continued to go for the goal, right? And I didn't take the time to see my body's not in the right place. It is not the right time. But I lied to myself and said, yes, I am, because I'm a doer and I do not quit. So I'm going to go reach that goal. But I couldn't do it at that time. I had to take care of other priority things first, like my own physical health and mental health. But I lied to myself for quite a long time until that 3rd miscarriage. And I had a come to Jesus moment with myself and said, you know what? Jig is up. We need to be honest. It's not the right time. And I have to focus on being fertile in my life mentally, emotionally, physically, before I can actually birth another physical baby. So I had to be honest with myself. So I ask myself every day, how much do I want to respect myself? How much do you want to own it today, Blaise? Because only pure truth will get me there. No BS, no little white lies inside, and excuses. Battling negative self-talk doesn't mean you walk around all day with like tinfoil on your head to block all the thoughts out and saying out loud affirmations like a mantra statement. I am beautiful. I am beautiful. I am enough. I am worthy. I am skinny. I am abundant. Right? You can't do that. That's crazy. That doesn't actually help you. It's about actually creating a filtration system, because you're going to have good and bad thoughts come in, and you've got to allow the good to come in and sink in and take root, and the bad to be sifted out. And in the words of Pink, changing the voices in your head and make them like you instead. And you do this by creating a mental courtroom, so to speak, inside. It's allowing yourself to be the defendant, the plaintiff, the jury, and the judge. And you need to step into all of these roles and weigh the evidence. The evidence being your thoughts, outside comments and circumstances, understanding your triggers. These court proceedings are about continually asking questions. Yes, no, sifting through everything. Is this fake news, right? Until you discover truth, and you'll know inside when you're being that honest and having that BS detector, you'll know. Trust me. And then we usually engage in negative self-talk when we do feel triggered in some way or another. So what's a trigger? Well, when you get a physical or emotional reaction to something happening that activates our sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, or freeze. And we can't self-regulate in that mode. It's defense mode, and you need to get into the offense position. So part of self-love and self-respect is learning how to pull ourselves out of fight, flight, or freeze and into the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, meaning we're able to step back and create that inner courtroom to weigh the evidence so I can take conscious action, not just have a reaction. We need to get real with ourselves and admit what those triggers are, and then you can identify it right when it happens. Again, no BS, and self-regulate. That's a deep respect for yourself. I'll be honest, when something triggers me, I have recognized immediately that I get heart palpitations, I get really hot. Like it almost starts from my chin and goes all the way up to the top of my head. My ears burning and I get anxiety, like almost like an anxiety attack. Like it's palpable, the physical reaction when I'm triggered from something. And I used to go right into freeze or fight. Like I would be so frozen, I wouldn't even know how to respond in that situation. I was so panic attack, anxiety overwhelm. I system shut down, frozen, right? But sometimes I would immediately go into fight for my defense mechanism. And I'd lash out and fight and engage without having any thought process. Is these the words I'm supposed to be saying? Is this the approach? Like I had no internal dialogue. I just was in sympathetic nervous system response, defense, protection mode, survival. But it was all coming from that reaction mode rather than a conscious critical thinking and action mode. So I couldn't actually own my own identity because I was just in survival mode, right? So after a lot of work that I have done, and it hasn't been easy, but it's worth the work because I still get triggered. We're never going to get rid of the triggers. Just like our ego, it's still going to be there, but you learn how to coexist with them. And I go, aha, I know this feeling. I know exactly what this is. This must be I'm being triggered. And you may not even know why you're being triggered, but you're obviously in protection mode. And I have learned that. I have examined every situation that has been conflict or anything that has gone off the rails. And you're like, okay, I'm feeling this feeling. What's happening here? And I'm able to activate my self-regulator. Take a pause, take a breath. I call it the 3-second rule. I take 3 seconds while I take a breath and I'm taking inventory of this specific feeling I have, whether it's anger, sadness, that heart palpitation, that heat feeling. Those are all warning signs that your body's like, whoa, danger, not safe. We need to protect, but we need to allow ourselves to get into that rest and digest mode in order to truly actually protect ourselves. And then I'm able to recognize I'm in a trigger shit show, literally. I have this negative narrative trying to take place in my head and I'm just reactive. But I go into pause and self-regulation and I ask questions in my head like, is this true? Is this just my defense mechanism? How can I neutralize this? What can I do in this very moment to de-escalate this situation? How can I take appropriate action that doesn't have me buying into these negative thoughts or storylines? And sometimes it's just as simple as, I don't know how to deal with this at this moment, or this thought, or this situation, whatever's going on. So I give myself permission to shelve it temporarily, gather more intel, and walk away until I'm able to make an accurate decision. Sometimes you need to walk away, get up from the table, just turn and say, I can't deal with this right now. You don't say anything because I'd rather say nothing than say something that was damaging. You know what I mean? You can see, I hope you can recognize right now, maybe you're going through your head of how you feel when someone comes against you, when you're getting into a fight with your partner or a friend or something happens at work. What happens internally that you get so upset? Because that's your key. That's your clue as to that's your trigger. And that's your key of how you can tackle that to self-regulate. And it's so amazing when you don't become a victim of your own internal narrative, your thoughts, your negative, toxic thoughts, that storyline that your brain wants to create to protect you. I am taking ownership of what's going on and I guide myself through a series of questions back to rest and digest state. So tackling negative self-talk is really just about practicing being the ruler of your own thoughts. There are good ones and bad ones, and you are the master of them. You decide. You have the control. We control the narrative of our life. Whether we think life is happening to us, we do control the response. And that's incredibly empowering and the beginning of developing such a profound respect for yourself because you now know thyself. Once you start incorporating those 5 W's identity checklist every single day and the self-regulator in your daily routine, that builds such a strong sense of self. You are proud of your identity because you are realizing your true authentic self, and you want to protect that person because you've built her or him. It doesn't just stop there though. We need to own our space and verbalize our needs, wants, and desires and our identity. And this was so scary for me because I got all the way to this point and I was doing the work and it was working and I was able to de-escalate and regulate myself, but it wasn't stepping out and really verbalizing and owning it. That's a whole other thing, right? But it's part of it. You can't just internally self-regulate. You do need to take that step to own your worth. And I got another trigger attack when I had to verbalize it then. I would have this panic because I've had a lot of times where I voiced my needs or opinions and it wasn't received well. And I'm going to talk about that. So I'm going to give you the best tip to understand how to articulate and verbalize what you need. You need to create that list for yourself before ever verbalizing it to others. That is so important. How can we ask for what we need and want when we don't know what we need and want? Because my husband will often say, what do you want? What can I do to help you? And I just blurt something out without actually going through that list first and being sure of what I need and want to feel supported. And so I just give him things and then he does that and I'm still unfulfilled because I actually didn't do the work first and figure out my identity, what I need, and ask for it. So you've got to do the back work first. It's so important. You need to create that list and be confident before you can actually take that next step to verbalizing it. And we jump the gun so much, but it's so vital to actually getting what you truly need and want when you actually know it, right? So it's another step to the self-regulator. The questions never stop. It's a continuous dialogue with yourself. So now that I'm in rest and digest mode, I can ask deeper questions. What triggers me? What would help me to feel safe in those situations? How can I set someone up in the conversation so they realize this is difficult for me to even talk about, right? Like maybe this is very difficult for me to ask, but I recognize I need this. But how do I ask it? Every time I've ever asked for anything, it's been pounded down and not received well. So I have this conversation with my husband, like I feel triggered just even asking a man for something. And it's not you, it's just men in general because I've had some bad experiences. So I need you to help me create a safe environment for me to articulate my feelings because that will help both of us. Do you see what I'm doing there? It's really understanding who I am. And it's not bad that I have a trigger like that. It just is. But I need him to understand it. And for him to understand it, I need to admit to it. And I need to verbalize that to him. Creating even a safe word. Like pineapple, I'm triggered. I need a safe environment. I'm feeling very unsafe. And he can recognize that. And that's not silly. That's self-respect. Okay? So you have these dialogues. What do I need today? What would help me feel valued? What would make me feel supported in my marriage, my life, or my work? What do I need right now? What do I want? Only you can do this. And you have to write this out and really harness what those things are. And that really opens the door and permission for you to just take the scary step of verbalizing it. Because it's not so scary anymore. Because you truly know what you want and what you need. And only one of two things happen when you do state your needs. Either it's met with respect and acceptance, or it's rejected. It's only one of two things. And it's so amazing when the person values your input and wants to meet your needs, right? When I say, honey, when you say goodnight and you go right up to bed and I am left and doing 20 things before I'm able to go say goodnight and go to bed, and I feel overwhelmed. But usually I would just get all hissy, right? And in a tizzy about it. And he would be upstairs in bed, already lights off. And I'm coming downstairs still scrubbing pots, turning things off, locking up the doors. And I start resenting him. And then I go up to bed, lay down, and I'm pissed off. And he's like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. Right? Like that's communication breakdown. So when we weren't in that moment, just in the regular evening of the day, I sat him down and said, when you say goodnight and you just leave, I feel like you've put things on me and it's overwhelming and I get frustrated and then I get heated and then I resent you and we didn't even have a fight. I just created this whole narrative in my head. And so I said, could you help me by taking some of these things off the list? And it's your responsibility. That would help me. And he was like, of course. So now every night he has his jobs to do before he actually says goodnight. And I don't feel ripped off because he did his half and I'm working on my half. And it's cohesiveness. And I communicated and I actually said what I needed. And that is helping me. So it's all about understanding what you really want and need and saying it. We've got to be able to verbalize it because that is the next step of self-respect. And it is amazing, like my husband met me. That's like, poof, done. But it doesn't always work like that. The other half of the coin is that it gets rejected. People don't hear what you're saying. They think you're ridiculous or emotional or they don't see a problem, right? So they just immediately disregard what you're articulating, your needs, your identity. But I had to realize this one. It's not you being rejected. It's not your worth. It's not your identity. And that was so hard for me because I'm a softie. And when someone basically says out loud that they don't value your opinion or your feelings, that hurts. But you know what? It's a them problem. Nothing to do with you. And the most difficult thing to do is to voice that to them. That it's not me, it's you that just doesn't see the value, right? And if you continue to have that conversation and they don't come around and they don't get it and they don't accept your feelings as being valid, then you have to take that brave step of walking away. And that is so hard, especially I find for women. I don't think we're taught that it's okay to walk away. We're taught to continue and fight for it. And there is a process of, yes, fighting for something and working at it and finding different ways to communicate and articulate it. But there comes to a point if someone's not going to respect your feelings, you have to walk away. And that's so hard and scary when you talk about that with relationships, with friendships, with jobs, just anything in life with women owning their own worth. Part of that is walking away when it's not given. But it is incredibly freeing and the ultimate self-respect litmus test because you teach people how to treat you. And some will never see your value, but no one will ever value you if you don't cherish yourself. So when it comes to asking for anything, verbalizing any need or feeling, whether it's even a raise or a promotion at work, you have to actually go through the 5 W's again. So I do my identity checklist first thing in the morning, but you got to do a separate one for actually verbalizing my needs and what I want. So you do 2. You have that honest conversation with yourself before owning your worth anywhere else. Who am I? Am I being valued in this situation? Why do I want this? What warrants this conversation? Do I need to point out something? Is there something going on? If it's at work, what are my achievements that warrants this promotion or a raise? Where do I want to go? Often we get told these stories. You've been at work for a year or you've done this position for a while. It's time to move up, get a promotion, get a raise. And we think that's the logical progression. But do I want this? Do I want more responsibility? Am I happy as I am? Is this something that's just a story told to me or do I actually want this? We need to have that question and answer dialogue within ourselves. When? Is this the right time? We're in COVID. Is this the right time to even ask for a raise or a promotion or are we downsizing? Is this the right time for me and my family to take on more responsibility or do I want to eliminate some stress right? So you have to go through the 5 W's again for the specific area you want to voice. Whether it's at work, or something's going on in a friendship, your feelings are hurt, a partnership, this dialogue, you need to have it fully fleshed out for you to know it and then ask for it, because otherwise you're just going blind and you're going to go in circles and you're going to have miscommunication and you're going to set yourself up and others for a horrible communication experience when you don't know what you want or need. So when you have the list worked out, then again, you need to take that brave step and verbalize it, even if it's a tough conversation. And you might get triggered in that. I still do, but it's less and less. I'm neutralizing it because I'm recognizing where I am. And then I set people up, whether it's to your superior or your partner or anybody. And again, it's only met with either acceptance or rejection. And if it's rejected, most people don't take that step to find somewhere that will see your value, whether it's a friendship or whatever, your job. Most people will just stay in the job unhappy and not valued. And they've totally told them. They've totally told you they don't value you. I've had that. Someone once said, if someone is blatantly telling you they disrespect you and don't value you, believe them. Don't think you can work hard and prove by your doing. If they don't accept your very being as validated and enough and they want to work with you and meet you in the middle, believe them. It's never going to happen. You've got to create an exit plan and walk away. You are worth it. So don't sell yourself short. You don't quit on the spot, but you create that exit plan. Create a way to find someone and the world to appreciate what you have to offer. But like I said, it starts with you doing it for yourself. And sometimes organically it just happens because you're walking in that energy, in that heart space, in that authentic core identity. People just, you are worthy because I see you owning that, right? It's so incredibly brave to take that stance on self-respect. And I'll be honest, me owning my worth has not always been rainbows and met with people just massively accepting me and this new quest that I'm on. I get a lot of rejections, but it doesn't trigger me like it did before. I sift through it, I see it, and I self-regulate and I move on with my head held high. I am free. And when you can get to that kind of freedom, you have been a massive risk taker. And that is so exciting and liberating. And it opens up a pathway for you to take more risks in your life and in other areas because it's safe. You begin to pursue things that you're passionate about. You let go of this need to control because you've created safety in your own identity. So risk has become safe. Vulnerability is safe. And you are experiencing a whole new you. That is heroin. So this all boils down to just understanding who you are. Keep being you. Stop the identity theft, the imposter syndrome. Verbalize what you need and what you want because you've gone through that identity checklist and you know exactly who you are and where you're going and what you want to be. Respect yourself. It all boils down to self-respect and breathe fire. So let's just recap what we talked about today. The self-esteem movement isn't about self-esteem at all. It's about self-respect. How to do the identity checklist with the 5 W's. And when we know thyself, we want to protect ourselves and contend for our true identity. If you want to learn more about my consulting programs, purchase my book, or have me speak at your next virtual event, please visit blaisehunter.com. That's it for this week's episode. Challenge yourself to be vulnerable, lean into the difficulties, and have those open conversations so we can rise up as the heroes of our lives and let us breathe fire together. If you've enjoyed this show, please subscribe and support Blaise the Trail podcast. Reviews are always welcome and very much appreciated. Thanks for listening. I'm Blaise Hunter.
You've been listening to Blaise the Trail with Blaise Hunter. To learn more about how you can breathe fire and unleash the hero within, or to listen to past episodes, visit blaisehunter.com.